Hello, everybody. Welcome. Beautiful people, welcome. We're going to be talking about some ugly, as usual. And this is some information that I have talked about for probably as long as I've been online, which has been about 6, maybe 7 weeks when I started to make videos on a regular basis. Before that, I had made videos like maybe once every couple of months. And so I had made like maybe 8 videos, but since then I've made many. And I've talked about this same theme that I'm going to talk about today over and over. And of course, this is all about it's a crime, all right. We're talking about the Charles Vallow murder. We're talking about how they never investigated beyond that first day that we know of. Unless there's papers out there that said that they actually did more interviews. We haven't seen any interviews from the neighbors. We haven't seen any interviews of the 3 that were in the house, or I should say 4, because JJ was there too. So to recap the story, Charles Vallow went to pick up his stepson from Lori Vallow's rented house in Arizona. That morning, around 7:30ish, he arrived to pick up JJ. Almost 8:30, the Arizona police got a phone call from Zack Cox saying that his brother-in-law is lying on his sister's floor and that he had just shot him. And the 911 operator, so graciously, as they all do, and as they are all trained, asked if he would perform CPR on Charles. He said, no, I don't feel like it, or I don't know how to do it, is basically what he said. Okay, I'm in Florida and I'm pouring a tall glass of water into some ice because it feels 100 with the humidity. But anyway, so with that said, guys, let's cut right into the chase of what happened that morning. Now, we all know from that 48 hours interview with Summer and Janice Cox, that interview came 4.5 months after the public had learned that there was 2 possible missing kids. I'm going to leave this question in your minds. Why would it take Summer and Janice 4.5 months after their grandson, grandchild, granddaughter, nephew, and niece are said to be missing? Wouldn't you imagine? Now, if this was your niece and nephew, and I know we all have our own lives, and you can't run out the door, but if you did have that opportunity to grab your coat and run out the door, wouldn't you go to Rexburg, Idaho, looking for your niece and nephew? I haven't heard an account of that. Have you? Has there been any papers that we've been allowed to review that indicates that Summer and Janice and Barry and everybody, just like the 4 others, moved up to Rexburg in the hunt for JJ and Tylee? Was there any poster boards being disseminated around town, around the greater Rexburg area, indicating that the family was concerned about where JJ and Tylee were? So if you think of that, where was Janice and Summer? Where was everyone? I know that the only Cox member in that time, other than Colby, we all understand that Colby's been very worried every second of the day. So we understand that he isn't made up the same way as his grandmother and his aunt and whoever else. But we do know that Zack Cox came out in sometime in February, and I'm going to throw out a date. It's just from memory. I think it was February 10th or sometime around there. Maybe it was totally different. Maybe I'm mixing up a date. But sometime in the early stages of these investigations, because the investigations, started around late November, when the authorities went to the house in Rexburg that Lori was renting and interviewed everybody there. They interviewed Alex. They interviewed Chad, who tried to run away, as you can remember, without telling the authorities that he was married to Lori and that he did indeed have her phone number. The first interview, he lied and said he did not have her phone number. But when they grabbed him the second time, he coughed it up and he gave them Lori's phone number, but he still did not disclose that he had any relation to her. He actually pretended that he had no relation, that he only knew her on the periphery. Well, wouldn't we like that to be true? Wouldn't we all be sitting here so happy if Chad Daybell and Lori Daybell had never met? Because I think we have all come to the math in this case to understand there was a combustion. And that combustion was a deviant Lori meets a deviant Chad. And when those two met, it was an enormous explosion of evil from the flesh. So all we can say, we all talk about the devil being evil, Satan being evil, Lucifer being evil, and the terms that the LDS Church called their Satan. They have different terms, but within my terms, it's always Satan, devil, evil. Do we not wish that they had never met that time that they met in St. George, Utah? St. George, Utah, just to give you your bearings, is in the southwest corner of Utah. It is very close. And it's a very perilous road from the Nevada way. If you're coming in through the Nevada way, and it can be a very perilous trip to St. George from that way because of the drop-offs. They can be hundreds and hundreds of feet. So when these people came, Melanie Gibb had said, her and Lori drove to St. George. And then, of course, Chad had come down from Rexburg. They take a little risk coming to St. George, but they did go there for a preparing a people discussion. But to get back to Zack Cox, why is he our prize? Because not only did his so-called cousin, because it would be Colby Ryan, so they were somehow, they both have Cox blood. Adam Cox is Zach's father. Adam is Alex's and Lori's brother. And then Colby has Lori's blood because Lori's her mother. And as we'll hear down the line, why didn't William LaGolia have anything to do with Lori after they were divorced? And I'll speculate on that later. But for right now, you get the melding of those two. But Zack Cox did us a favor months ago. Zack Cox said, hey, public, I'm putting this out here. I'm going to give you a Twitter message. And in that Twitter message is going to be exactly this. You can't trust Melanie Pawlowski. Everything she's saying is a lie. Everything that's coming out of Melanie's mouth is a lie. He also said in that same Twitter message, she is part of the cult, thick and thin. Now, what does kind of thick and thin mean? Like very heavily influenced, very heavily standing up for her cult. That's what he said about his cousin. Because remember, Stacy, Melanie's mother, is a Cox, or was a Cox before she passed away. And then, of course, Zack is Adam's son. He said she's lying. He said she's in the cult thick and thin. And he also said Melanie Pawlowski knows where the children are. What a bold statement. I am wondering where he got that information. I know that he had lived with Charles and Lori up until the time she stole the $35,000 out of his business account and stole his car. So I am wondering what he had heard and saw. So we might hear something in the next few months around this, because obviously he was pointing, Zack Cox was pointing fingers to at least Melanie Pawlowski. But where did he get that information? I can only assume, and keep this in the back of your minds, I can only assume he got the information from living with Charles and Lori up until January 31st, or maybe a little bit later. Maybe it took him some time to move out, of 2019. He had been a student in college at that point. So with that said, I am going to play a little clip that I have here on my device, and we'll all listen to this if it plays. You guys know I'm not good with any devices or any sharing of stuff yet. I am working on that. And I want to repeat this again. I have talked about this for the 6 to 7 months, how Alex came out of the house, first unharmed, realistically, from the bat. He came out and he was just ready to spill the beans, tell the cop what caused the altercation. And that is when that police officer asked Alex to move, because a fire truck was moving up close to them and he was trying to protect his client. So I'm going to share with you that we missed some vital information. I've talked about this from day one. We missed some vital information when all of the different children actually, in this case, seem to be in and out of the house when it comes to a different speaker. If it was Lori speaking, the kids weren't in the house. If it was Tylee speaking, she was in the house with the bat incident. If it's Alex speaking, the kids weren't in the house. So we got all kinds of mixed match stories about when the kids were in the house. So if I can call it up on this device, you'll be lucky, because you know Gumshoe Graham isn't good with new technology and using little tiny phones that only give you a tiny place to hit the button. But anyways, you get my drift. This is about Alex. This is about him coming out with the tiniest injury. If we go online, and if you actually go online and ask people who have been hit by a bat, you will find that they've had serious head injuries. So I am still purporting 6 to 7 weeks later that Charles Vallow was ambushed, and Charles Vallow did not hit Alex on the head with a bat. That's just an excuse. That's just an excuse. So here we go. First of all, we're going to see if we can play this video. Maybe I can't get it to play on one device. Let me try another.
Yes, I did. I asked Alex the day before Charles was coming if he would please go stay with Lori.
What was your reaction when you heard what happened that morning?
Shock. And I think they were in shock. I was in shock. But I was very grateful also because I know that it would have had a very different outcome had Alex not been there. And I'm sad that that happened. I didn't want that to happen. I feel for his family. I understand what it feels like to lose a brother. It's not fun. And so I don't wish that on them by any means, but he was here with an agenda. He was here causing the trouble. She was not trying to go after him. He was here bugging her.
Oh.
You asked Alex to go to the house that morning.
Did you hear that? She says he was there bugging her. Is that quite different than Charles was there to harm Lori? Bugging, she says. Bugging. What is up with the vocabulary in the Cox cult, in the Cox Daybell cult? What is up with their vocabulary? How can you tell a reporter that Charles was there to bug Lori, and that is why you sent your brother over, who you know carries a gun? He always packs a gun. That is noted throughout all the conversations that we have heard that Alex carried. So why would Summer Shifflet tell her brother to go over to Lori's house because Charles was going to be bugging her? Well, don't a lot of people bug us? I mean, do we send people over to protect someone? We know she's making this up. And why did this 4.5 months later come to fruition? Why wasn't this interview at the start of when the kids were missing? This was after Melanie Pawlowski had gone on to a media blitz telling the world that her auntie was in danger. She was telling the world that her auntie was in danger because 1, Kay Woodcock was after JJ. 2, that they were dangerous somehow. 3, that Charles had been dangerous. They were spinning this web of tales to such a point that it was incredulous when I heard their tales. When I heard every interview, they said the same thing over and over. They did not give us a description. They could not define where they got the reasoning. See, usually when people say someone's dangerous, they'll say, oh, he had hit Lori before, or he had come after Lori in a restaurant and pulled her out by the hair, or he had smacked Lori in the face and gave her a broken nose when she was going shopping with a girlfriend. These are the types of indicators that come before. So none of these people had these backstories. They weren't saying, hey, Charles had a history. Hey, Kay had a history. They were just making these end results to be true with no backup to them. Absolutely no backup. Now, how can that be true? They'll make them up now. You can be assured. If they're testifying in court, it is my opinion that they will be backing up the backstories that are necessary to support the statements that their media blitz were doing. They were trying to harm Charles's reputation. They were trying to harm Kay's reputation as a grandparent. So here we are, people. I don't get it. I don't get how Summer Shifflet thought it was okay 4.5 months later, after the kids have been missing, they haven't been found yet, but she's coming on the stage. Another goddess on the stage. 2 goddesses on the stage. We can't get rid of these goddesses quick enough. And what makes all these goddesses lie? What makes all these goddesses manipulative? And what makes these goddesses possibly, in my opinion, involved with murder, a series of murder, one after another, of their own flesh and blood. And if it's not their own flesh and blood, it's their husband and it's their lover's wife, Tammy Daybell. I mean, this was family annihilation in the rawest forms. We don't hear it in the media. We hear, oh, a cult got together and murdered, wiped out people. People. This was a family. This was a family annihilation. If Colby had been living at home, if he had been at the age, he possibly, in my opinion, would have been a victim, as well as his wife. She definitely, because she had been labeled dark. But so here we are. How does Summer, 4.5 later, get on national TV that she knows is going to go worldwide, because she knows the whole world is watching this case, and she gives us the idea that her sister was a victim and her sister was a lovely mom. I gotta go now because I got tree cutters next to me, and you know what goes on then. They'll never stop. You'll hear that motor of the chainsaws for hours now. But I am going to say this. Summer and Janice would have come on much earlier if they were really cared. They would have been looking for their cousins and their grandchildren and whatnot. They would have never have believed that Alex had a small, little, tiny cut on his head that gave the statement that Charles had hit him with a bat. If you go online, you will read that people that get hit by a bat go unconscious. They have severe internal bleeding. Their head swells. Now, I'm going to leave you with this one thought. If he had been hit by a bat, if Alex had been hit by a bat, why wasn't that bat strong enough to injure him to such a degree that his head, that just shortly after the murder of Charles, Alex put his sunglasses on the top of his head. You know that little cut that he had on his head? Well, that's worthy of a mention, because if you have a cut on your head from a swing of a bat, how can you lay your sunglasses on the top of your head? How can you? How can you use your head as a shelf? You know what I mean? Like, would you put something on your head after a bat just swiped you? Especially when the swiper was a known excellent baseball player, and that he would know how to swing a bat to hurt someone. Would you go laying your sunglasses up on your head Using it like a shelf? I don't think so, guys. I have no clue why people believe that Alex was hit with a bat while he was using his noggin, his head, for a shelf. And I gotta go because of the machines. Now we got fireworks. So we got three things. We got a plane and we got fireworks all in one.